Alright, so this video is about knowing your enemy, and the police are your enemy. If you are poor, the police are your enemy. I used to have a friend named Brandon Jepson. We're no longer friends because him and I don't see eye to eye on law enforcement. His name is Brandon Edward Jepson. There's two Jepson families. Brandon Edward Jepson is the brother of Jason Jepson, Little Jason Jepson. Little Jason Jepson is the one who was married to Ashley Olsen. The one who tried to shoot his own wife. The one who used to brag about having a meth rock that she walked by every single day in their house. Brandon went to school for law enforcement in Torrington, Wyoming. He got kicked out of college because he was not old enough to have a handgun, and he had a handgun in his dorm room. Brandon taught me a few things about law enforcement. He taught me things like the 3 I's. The 3 I's are when you try to turn in a police officer, the first I is to ignore them. If that doesn't work, then you intimidate them. If that doesn't work, you incarcerate them. Every police officer that I have tried to turn in an officer to has given me the 3 I's. Now, when it comes to crooked cops, you're just going to have to deal with this. And every single police officer in America is taught these 3. That includes internal affairs. Internal affairs pretended to investigate a great many things. But they won't even pretend unless there's public outcry or your family gives a shit. If your family don't care, they're not going to investigate. They're not even going to pretend to. Now, these aren't the only techniques that Brandon taught me. He also taught me pain compliance. Everywhere else in the world, they call this torture. Pain compliance is where you apply physical pain. What is the goal of applying this physical pain? In most cases, it's to try to force, not compliance, but to force somebody to admit to something they didn't do. If you hurt them enough, if you torture them enough, they will eventually break and bend to your will. The Knights Templar understood. They used pain compliance through almost the entirety of their reign. And at the end of it, pain compliance was used against them. Their methods were a lot more brutal, though. They could dangle you over a fire, dangle your feet over a fire until the bones fell into it. Yes, these are our famous Christian knights. The Knights Hospitaller did the same. Is that the only thing they're taught to do? No! They're also taught that if they want to assault you, just in case there might be an onlooker, you say, "Stop resisting! Stop resisting!" Meanwhile, that officer has his arm shoved so far up your back, you can't move it. There is no possible way that you can resist. The resistance that officer is feeling Is your arm nearly to the breaking point? When you are homeless, you are victimized by the cops because they can make money off of you. Adolf Hitler did this. We just do it differently. Adolf Hitler's model for his forced labor camps came from the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America. At the end of the Civil War, before the war was even over, Congress decided to introduce the 13th Amendment, which said that you could not have a slave unless they were convicted of a crime. That's where we get slave labor in the United States, which still continues to this day. Boulder, Colorado utilizes the 13th Amendment often. They prey on homeless people, and then they force compliance, there's your quotation marks, and torture these people into taking a plea bargain. Forced labor. Now there's two types of forced labor. The first type is work release, where you pay them money to let you go out and go to work. The second type is called community service. It's not service, it's slave labor. If you get busted with an illegal blanket in Boulder, Colorado after 10:30 at night on public property, it will cost you, for your first offense, it will cost you 60 hours of slave labor and over $400. These are the techniques utilized by our enemies. Our enemies. The Slander by Natalie Bollinger, Alicia Bollinger, and Maddie Boa created a zone of danger for me everywhere. It made me a target for druggy friends of theirs. It made me a target for the police. It made me a target for the general public. And the news sure the fuck didn't help. You guys want to call me crazy and creepy for being pissed off? Fuck you! This is the shit a person should be pissed off about. The police in the United States are not taught to go after criminals. They're taught to go after money in the form of taxes. They are taught to go after those easiest to victimize. They are taught to go after people that nobody cares about. Police go after the very same people that serial killers go after. The easiest way for you to get away with being a serial killer is to go after homeless people and prostitutes. How many women do you know that would be prostitutes if they had family that gave a shit? I've known a lot of women who have been prostitutes. A lot of them. You need to know your enemy. Your enemy is not the homeless. Your enemy is the government. Your enemy is Child Protective Services. Your enemy is the police and the FBI. Your enemy are the rich. The FBI doesn't work for the American people, neither do the police. Law enforcement is taught these things for a reason. To protect rich people's money. They are taught who it's easiest to victimize. The people who don't have the money for a civil attorney. Why is that? Because they're protecting the money. They can victimize you and get your tax dollars and the rest of America's tax dollars by going after you, knowing full well that you can't go after them for the wrong things that they've done. You can't use the telephone in the jail because you don't have any money on your books. You can't buy commissary because you don't have any money on your books. Meanwhile, somebody with money on their books can literally have you beaten up for one package of ramen noodles. This is not a joke, folks. If you're in jail and a jail guard assaults you, they can put you on suicide watch or put you in the hole, and their problems magically go away. There needs to be body cameras on at all times, on every officer, whether they work in the criminal justice system, as far as the jails go, the criminal justice system as far as sheriff's departments go, the criminal justice system as far as the FBI goes, or the criminal justice system as far as police departments go. When I said that police across the board omitted evidence, that's one of the things that they omitted. The fact that from day one, I have been trying to force the police to wear body cameras so they cannot do the things that they did to me. Fuck the police. They are not your friends unless you have money. The only reason they pretend to look for missing Native American people is because the Native community comes together and forces them to at least pretend. The only reason the police pretend like they care about people like Sammy Lee